partners. Digital connectivity is the focus of the 27-nation bloc. Sridharji, your thoughts on the EU initiative? Is it a little bit late?
Namaskar. Good morning to everybody. And, on this bright Wednesday morning on November the 17th, looking forward to another exciting session. I think EU has at last got its act together. EU as a bloc is now beginning to recognize that it is a bloc and it needs to work far more effectively together with a consistent and cohesive policies. The fact that they have taken a step forward in their attempt to reestablish the trade, security, and other dialogue with Asia is a very welcome step in my humble view. The question is, can they execute? Is it too little, too late? Never. There is nothing called too little, too late. And I think their emphasis around sustainability, which is implementation of some of the climate policies, the digital connectivity, which helps them to get their message across from a policies point of view. Trade is obviously the enhancement of the trade with over 55% of the GDP coming from Asia in the next 20 years. And then, of course, the Indo-Pacific open platform and open trade, where they are looking at both India and some of the friendly countries like Japan. I think it augurs very well, sir. I think it is much needed.
And China's October coal output rose to the highest since at least March 2015, after Beijing approved a raft of coal mine expansions to tame record prices and boost supplies. Viewers, we have been telling you about the electricity shortage because of coal shortage, because China stopped taking coal from Australia. Even though they may be starting this, there's going to be a lag before it actually reaches the common man. Sridharji, this is how I see it. Do you think that China has gotten out of its power problem?
No, I think there essentially are two significant messages from here. One, this message is coming out just after the COP26 summit in Glasgow, right? Where India was branded the garland that it was the one which was playing hard on the coal policy, okay? But behind the back, it was China which was egging on and pushing. In fact, I tweeted once, which is to say at least a couple of publications calling them, hey, do you have different news sources? And is it not China which is actively behind this coal? And lo and behold, a couple of days later, you have this announcement that is coming. In other words, as you rightly pointed out, Sree, China has no other way other than using coal as powering not only its manufacturing, but powering its households. We covered this in DGI, their southern expansion around the Siberian desert, where they want to use this coal supplied from Russia, not only to have the southern provinces, but also to have, the Russian Siberian households or whatever the infrastructure that is there to power. So I think that what you are saying is very true. They probably will be less reliant on their ethane or fossil fuels, but more reliant on coal, because you can't overnight not only change your manufacturing as well as power generation from one to the other.
And Biden presses Xi Jinping on Taiwan, human rights, and Belt Road efforts. That is at the epicenter of the controversy. The meeting concludes with each of them agreeing to keep the doors open, but no let up on Taiwan. Sridharji, who called this meeting? I'm just curious. This is always the most important thing in such meetings.
Well, who called this meeting? I think the backroom dialogue on the threshold of these COP26 and the G20 summit. There was an attempt, which is to say we need to recommence the dialogue. Recall, we have again covered in DGI through several episodes that there has been attempted moves within this administration, be it the Treasury, be it the Commerce Secretary, be it the Treasury Secretary, be it the Deputy Secretary of State. There has been consistent attempts to reopen the dialogue with China. Whether Mr. Hunter Biden himself is involved, which was acknowledged by Mr. Biden with regard to what needs to be done, we don't know. But there has been a set of players, not one single individual, within the Biden administration who says we need to reopen the dialogue. This was also anchored by Kurt Campbell, who is the point man for him in the Asia Pacific region. So the dialogue has come to a knot, except that they said they'll keep the doors open, and the Taiwan, in my humble view, Taiwan, the position Mr. Biden has taken augurs well, which is to say there is no compromise on Taiwan.
And I hope India had some sort of an agreement with China that China will back off of LAC or something like that, because essentially it was, speaking for China as far along with itself in the COP26. I hope, I don't know. Saudi UAE signal that OPEC Plus will resist US calls to pump more oil. Right now, the crude is around $80 a gallon. But at the pump, Sridharji, it is still hovering between $4.50 to $5 a gallon. This is the lowest strata. If you think about regular unleaded, then there is premium unleaded. The regular unleaded itself is so high. Isn't this hurting the very people that they are trying to help?
Well, the inflation is running high, right? Now, we again covered in TGI 2 sessions ago that the root cause for the inflation is three things. One is energy prices. The second is around the food. The third is around the whole transportation and logistic cost, which is driving the prices up. The inflation is at the highest. Now, what is the cure? According to Biden administration, more austerity and more dole-outs will bring the inflation down. This is their kind of remedial response to the inflation levels, and for which their own representative, Mr. Manchin, says he doesn't believe and he doesn't accept the fact that more money thrown at people is going to bring the inflation down when there are fundamental issues around logistics, around the whole supply chain issues that has been self-inflicted. So unless and until we see some of these changes, the inflation or the price at the gas station is not going to come down, sir.
And Iran and Saudi Arabia are talking, but bad blood remains between the two rivals. Sridharji, this is essentially to grab the leadership of the Islamic community of the world, isn't it?
This is about the West Asian leadership. Who is driving the West Asian leadership? Iran has been more in news, especially after change of leadership occurred within United States. Right, so change of leadership here implies since 2021, when Mr. Biden took over, you can see more and more flexing of the muscles by Iran and less presence of the Saudi Arabia. What has triggered now this flexing and the issues is around what is happening in Yemen and what is happening around the peace accords that has been struck by the West Asian nations, barring Saudi Arabia with Israel. So I think Saudis are saying we are back in business. Yes, we are happy to speak with Iraq, but on our terms.
And Israel at the Dubai Air Show symbolizes the new Middle East. Israel and the UAE commence free trade agreement discussions. Israel asks donor countries to restore payments to Palestinians. A little bit context here, Sridharji. Were payments suspended to Palestinians?
Well, I think that the payments have been suspended during that period of the Trump administration. If you recall, it was resumed after Biden came back to power. He immediately released some of the neighboring countries. He encouraged them to release. I think Mr. Bennett is saying we are now beginning to see the difference between Hamas in Gaza versus the Palestinian Authority. I think we may be able to work with the Palestinians as long as the Palestinians shed the Hamas and Hezbollah's, from their anchorship in terms of the advocacies. So I think this is what you are beginning to see. I think Palestinians are also probably recognizing they have been taken for a ride. Remember, a lot of Palestinians work in Israel. So I think that this is probably a positive step from the Israeli side as well, sir.
And Naftali Bennett is unhappy with the United States' overtures to Iran on nuclear talk resumptions and avoids contact with the negotiators. So Sridharji, Naftali Bennett has been sort of under the radar for a bit, but now he's beginning to speak up, isn't it?
He's beginning to slowly speak up, and he's asserting his right. And he tried to make a soft approach and a rapprochement approach, which is namely to say, look, I've become the prime minister. I want to work with the world. I want to work with the nations. But at the same time, we cannot compromise on the sovereignty and the security of the state of Israel. The fact that he is doing the West Asia deal, I mean, the trade negotiations and trade partnerships with the West Asian countries, while at the same time he is trying to be conciliatory to the Palestine cause or the economic need, he has been very, very, very clear in terms of punishing those who are trying to hurt, be it in Syria, be it in Lebanon, be it in Iraq, be it from any of these resurgent groups operating from outside Iran. So therefore, the story is that he is, and then he's made it very clear he is at displeasure with the Iranian nuclear deal, especially when they are almost close to full enrichment and to a nuclear weapon. And then Naftali has said there's no point in talking to them. They have not complied with any of the conditions, and you are saying let's talk.
A request to all our viewers to like this video to help it go viral. And it looks like there is a lag when the video comes live on YouTube. The first few seconds are being missed out. We apologize for that. It used to be quite quick. I think that some change has happened. We will hunt it down and we'll fix it. But please do like this video as we go on to the next news item, which is in United Kingdom. 3 terror arrests after the deadly hospital blast. Till now, they have not said who these people are. They have not been identified. Sridharji, this is an ongoing problem. Why can't somebody say that this is the person responsible, this is the person's name?
Well, Mr. Boris Johnson is slowly moving towards the wokeism, it looks like. Once upon a time, he was far more, transparent and, far more assertive in his leadership. But now less and less information is coming out around any of these activities. And this is a specific instance of an activity in the hospital, and people have died and people have been injured. And there has been arrest, but without, they don't name it because they're afraid that it may hurt the sentiments of some people.
Sir, but it is also hurting the lives of some other people. I'm just boggled. NATO expresses concern over troop buildup around Ukraine. EU contemplates rapid deployment force by 2025 without the help of United States. I hope they're not related. I mean, the buildup is in 2021, Sridharji.
Europe is a bargaining bureaucracy, sir. Everything takes a little bit of time, and they woke up a bit late to the Asian cost, which we covered as the first item in the DGI, the current in today's program. Now they are beginning to realize that they are no longer want to be on the coattails of United States. They want to recognize that they are a bloc. They need to demonstrate. They not only need to demonstrate their capability and responsiveness on their own, they also must protect the nations. For example, Poland and Lithuania have called out to NATO and say, hey, we are in trouble. I'm a EU nation. You asked me to join the bloc, and we are in the bloc. And what are you doing to protect my interests when right around the border I have Russians hovering, as well as a potential threat from illegal immigrants crossing over? You are not doing anything about it. So I think that this is, in my view, despite our assertion around 2025, I think to me it is very good. They are waking up to the reality that they have to be an independent bloc to protect itself. We need a stronger European Union for a better balancing of the world powers.
Professor R. Vaidyanathan jokingly says that the average age of Belgium is 41 and the average waist size of the Belgian policeman is also 41 inches. So it just gives you that, Europe needs to wake up. I hope it does now. Let's wait and see how it goes. Russia says...
Just to respond to R, I think that he has to bring the ambassador card still work in India, sir.
I'm sure we'll find a similar analogy for the average European male. Russia says it is ready to mediate in the Belarus immigration crisis. Did they not create it in the first place?
Well, I think that Vladimir is one thing I admire about Mr. Putin is that he is a survivor. He knows how to juggle the global politics. And if you see all his incursions and assertions are around areas of his influence and control of Russia. He is not like Mr. Xi Jinping, trying to conquer the world and interfere in every facet of the world issue. So to me, I think that a passive power where he is protecting the right. So he's now saying Belarus and Ukraine and some of these guys in Central Asia, are my old republics or old countries which are part of my allied group. I'm willing to intervene, but at the same time, I may be tolerant of some of the stuff that is going on. I don't know whether he's an instigator, but he's probably was more tolerant.
And rising COVID cases across Europe, currently in fourth wave, poses grave concern and possible return to restrictions. Sridharji, just to finish the thought on Belarus, it all started with the rigged election. And now I think the deflection from the rigged election to something else appears to be this immigrant problem. Now you also have a situation where Russia is breathing down the neck of Ukraine. So you see where it is. Now it's all deflection politics, Sergi.
Geopolitics has no logic or no rationale. Why did Belarus allow Turkish planes to land in Belarus with droves of refugees from be it Syria, be it Iraq, or be it Iran, or be it Yemen? Why did it allow in first place? Why did Belarus tolerate? Why did the Belarus national airline allow these people to come in? So there probably is. This is what you call, a strategic bleeding agenda, which eventually engulfs these nations. That seems to be the trend. And as I say, there is no logic. They created the problem to create a problem, and in the process, use that as a lever to achieve their objectives. What is the objective? What is the lever they are using? Main gas pipelines from Russia flows through Belarus into EU. And they have enough choking points to cut that off. So they're now using that as a mechanism if this follows, if EU imposes more sanctions. So it requires some amount of delicate diplomacy. One of the things that I would say is, hey, negotiate with Belarus, work it out, recognize them rather than trying to be, accept the problems and see whether you can find a way out of this. So you can solve both the issue of these refugees at the same time being chopped off from the gas supply.
And your thoughts on the fourth wave of COVID in Europe?
Well, the facts are that the vaccine efficacies have proved that it's not working. That's number one. Number two is that it's probably not. They let more people to come in. That's the second facet. The third is how far the fundamental issues, the issues being, I think the winter has began to set in Europe, how far the winter is causing the permeation of this, whether there is a new variant that has kicked into Europe, we don't know. Just to give you some numbers, if I take a look at, we'll present it tomorrow, the active cases in Britain is around 1.52 million, it went down close to a million, and now it has gone to 1.52 million. Between Germany, France, Netherlands, Russia has moved to number 2. Between these nations, the cases are anywhere between 500,000 or 400,000 and upwards. This is just the onset of the winter, just on the verge of the onset of the winter. So you can imagine what this is. This is going to have a collateral consequences as we step into United States. United States is still around 9.2 million as we kind of get into this show, but there's some problems looming here. And what concerns me is the efficacy of the vaccines. If both the vaccines have had, the two dual vaccines have taken less than 50% or 52% efficacy, as they say, lo and behold, that means we are not shielded from, being infected.
And as Biden poll numbers dip, GOP hopefuls are enjoying the largest lead in 40 years, says an ABC poll. This is not a Fox News poll. This is an ABC poll. Sridharji, This was expected. I think people are still, murmuring that New Jersey should have also gone to GOP. But I think the tide is turning, and it's not actually that GOP is performing better. It is the underperformance or the bad performance of the Biden administration, the way I see it, Siddharji. You've been traveling. What is your impression about how the world is perceiving the Biden administration's 6 months so far in the presidency?
Well, I think that the Biden administration policies are being perceived within the context of as it applies to United States. World is riveting with the COVID situation, so therefore they are trying to address the COVID problems. Much of the displeasure comes from this vaccine supply and lack of availability of the vaccines around the world, and United States trying to be selfish. This is one of the initial feedbacks that is coming through. As far as the local policies around the dole-outs, as far as the policies around their budget, the policies around the critical race theory, policies around some of the issues around climate accord and etc. I just don't think that these issues have seeped into the world mindset, with most of them focused around their own domestic issues. This is very much a United States problem as we see it right now. You can see that EU was initially unhappy, but EU is now reconstructing its own strategy. India is reconstructing its own strategy. Notwithstanding the fact ASEAN and inviting United States for CPTPP membership, United States has basically said, no, we are not at this stage. We are not reopening that door again. So therefore, I think that the world is beginning to accept this new normal that is coming in. And even for Taiwan issue, people feel that they have to take charge on their own. And Taiwan is saying they are hoping that the United States will be supportive and protective of a sovereign or an independent, Taiwan, but at the same time they are protecting themselves. And same is the case with Japan, with increase in the defense budget plus also their defense expansion.
Sridharji, I still feel that the world can get control over this COVID virus only if it can identify accurately the source of the virus. Otherwise, I think these are all shooting in the dark. Some vaccines, they claim they are effective, some they don't, and again they use different methods to get there. I just feel like there is something that is missing. I don't know when China is going to realize this, and I don't know if it's going to be too late. So let's wait and see. This is just my 2 cents, sir. If you would like to add to that, please feel free before I go to the next line item.
There's only one program, that is PGurus program, that has highlighted that the COVID can be artificially and manually simulated and dispersed. And only one program that I have seen. Okay, there's a lot of data that I have seen, which speaks about how this virus could have spread. Any attempt to investigate and find the sources and the causes have been very successfully snuffed out, including in United States. Republicans have been at it. To some extent, bipartisan Democrats have been at it, but nothing has come out in terms of investigation and determining the sources and the dissemination of this virus through the ecosystem. Unless and until they get to the bottom of it, we're going to continue to live with it. And what also bothers me is a news item that came out in United States yesterday, which is to say, in one of the centers, the vaccines that were injected for the age group 2 to 5 had the wrong dosage. So,
oh my God.
People don't realize that once you are given, that's it. It is in your system. And many of the vaccines have not been, have been done as an emergency approval to combat the disease, because you need something to combat it rather than nothing. But these are all some of the issues which still remain in the periphery. I believe we are between 6 to 9 months away from really getting a handle on this issue. We have to get past this winter in Europe and United States. We already saw the effects of it in Asia, which much of the Asian economy is impacted before we can get to some kind of a reality on, how exactly we're going to deal with it.
And Senator Ted Cruz says that Biden's spending plan will drive inflation further and will be cruel to Americans. On the contrary, Biden says the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has no ability to assess his Build Back Better plan. This is nonsense from Biden. How can he say that? CBO is a bipartisan. I mean, they are just a government arm, and they know how to, weigh how much money is in the system. They know M1, M2, M3. How can he say that this has got no ability to assess? I'm just getting a little, if you want to rebut something, you have to rebut with data. And I see the data part lacking in Biden's stance, sir.
Well, I think advocacy and activism is the forefront of your policy. When you have predetermined what your course is by virtue of the caucus that runs your administration, which is dispense, then it doesn't matter what the truth is because you are refusing to look at the truth. You cut off your oil supplies and you ask the OPEC to increase the oil supplies. The energy prices goes up. You issue mandates. The mandates, when implemented, implies that it is going to take time. It is about people's choice. It chokes your logistics. It chokes your employment. That is reflected in 4.3 million people leaving workforce, not unemployed. They're leaving. They've quit their jobs. So when you look at all the micro and macro parameters and refuse to accept, and you feel that your agenda is the only thing that matters because you are about to lose that mandate, then there is nothing that comes in the way that is logical and empirical is the basis for decision making. In fact, Janet Yellen herself has stated that the inflation is real and it is going to stay for some time before it normalizes. But the story is, what is the consequence of it? We don't know.
Sridharji, prices have shot through the roof. I mean, hotel occupancy, if you look at it, the prices have doubled across the world. It's not just India. It's not just US. It's in India. It's across the world. I am completely gobsmacked at the amount of expenses that I'm incurring in my next trip to India, sir. I mean, I'm like, what the heck happened here? I mean, we are still not back to normal, but it's as if the world is wreaking vengeance on those bold enough to step out of their comfort zone. Anyway, I just wanted to add one more of Professor Arvi's acronyms. He calls people as double distilled dumbos. And I think we're going to be at a point where we're going to have a fourth D. That'll be Democrats. D4. So let's see what happens. Hopefully they'll smell the coffee and right their ship. Otherwise, this is going nowhere. That's just my 2 cents, sir. Manchin also doubts Biden's assertion that more spending will curb inflation. It flies in the face of what has been observed for what? Keynesian economics has been around for 100 years, close to.
But I think Keynesian economy works around, a government must intervene and increase cash in circulation, and people and manufacturing industry is impacted either on the ravage of a famine, in the ravage of a pandemic, or on the back of a war. Now, if you take the logic here on the pandemic, we have infused close to $10 trillion, $6.5 trillion, in 2021. 2020, and we have further injected another 1.2 trillion plus maybe another 2.5 trillion. So we are already close to $10 trillion infusion. There's a limit to which the amount of debt that can be added, even amortized as it may be, before the law of diminishing returns set in. What we have is law of diminishing returns, because too much of money is not good. That is reflected. Let's say, how is it reflected? We have covered again the amount of cash in the bank accounts, the amount of personal cash that people have retained despite spending. Despite the 2020, we saw a spike in online spending. 2021, we continue to see the hike in spending. It came from 2 parameters, 2 drivers. First driver is the energy price in 2021 has gone up. This is the gas, or the oil, has gone up from $45 to about $80. It went up to $85. So therefore, to some extent, that money is biting into the into the wallet. The second one is the interest rates. The interest rate so far has remained accommodative, so that has added to those who have mortgages, etc., additional dispensable cash. And the third, if I may add, is the stimulus that has been added by virtue of these child credits and other types of programs. But this is not an economic activity. This is not a sustainable way by which you can run and contain the inflation. This is the core of the issue that United States is facing.
Sridharji, on a related topic, are the borders now closed or are they still open and people can just get through? Because I know there's another caravan coming up.
Borders are never closed, sir. That is the policy of the caucus group led by Mr. Bernie Sanders and AOC. No question of closing the borders, no question of the wall, no question of ICE. There's lots of issues. We don't have the time window. We'll probably cover another session, which is namely all the assertions that is being made by Mr. Mayorkas is found to be not consistent with the investigations that has been done. Now the House is asking for this guy to come back and represent the House and Senate. Both are asking him to present himself. Now, forget that point. We are now talking about DOJ paying reparations for those illegal refugees who were left, who felt the stay in Mexico policy impact being left behind. Reparations. Taxpayers are going to pay money because, well-intended legal advocates here, file litigation, and then the government is forced to pay. So again, taxpayers have to pay for these things. So there's no logic or rationality when you look at all these questions and the economic outlays that is being set aside for non-economic activity, and there's definitely a consequence as a result of this.
Senator Tom Cotton says that the rise in gas prices is the intended consequences of Joe Biden's energy policy and not some accident. I completely agree with him on this point. Sridharji, we have been belaboring this over and over again. At the risk of making the viewers bored, let's just, give me a couple of lines and then we'll go on to the next line item, sir.
Well, I think that this whole fundamental belief, I think you touched on this with regard to China, which is namely, if they continue to go an alternate route and source coal and reignite and do the excavation and exploration of new mines, there is a time delay between the time they complete this process and this coal becomes available for the thermal power stations and then the power reaching manufacturing and retail. I think you made that point. The same applies to United States. If you're going to cut all the fossil fuel supplies and overnight move to electronic vehicles and electronic outlets, you need minimum 3 to 4 years for that to happen. You can't first choke your own supply and then put a transition plan without a budget and assume that this will all happen in 12 months and everything will be transitioned. So this is what Tom Cotton is saying about this is an intended consequence to hurt this economy. Why it is to hurt the economy? To hurt the economy because you can continue to use that as a justification to borrow more and more and more to put into the system.
So I think we are going to start calling people with the D4 moniker if this thing continue and we can nail their statements which cause these kinds of disruption in the US economy. It's high time somebody took that step. Steel company that smuggled illegal immigrant workers forfeits $6 million to feds and criminal charges against the owner have been dropped. So basically the guy pays a fine and the charges have been dropped. Is that how it is?
That is, we are in an era of amnesty. You pay and you go, you committed illegal. Maybe next time you do more and you get away. He brought in cheap labor prices. The government was tolerant. There are plenty of supply. So no problem.
Sir, on a related topic, I think 2 or 3 DGIs ago, we talked about the United States DOJ sending out notices to people who have come in illegally to appear in front of a judge or something to that effect. But many of them are moving, and where are they going to register, sir? Illegals are not going to go and register in front of any place. The only place you can catch them is when they are coming in.
It's a good news item, sir. It's a good news item to do your PR. That's it.
I mean, do you think, Democrats, do you think that people are dumbos? I mean, this kind of news, do you think people aren't going to challenge you? And you continue to do this thing. I don't know. I mean, this is just putting mud on one's own head, is how I see it. Worker shortages drive companies to boost benefits amid holiday hires, with positions starting at $16.75 per hour. In fact, if you watch any YouTube show today, Amazon is advertising at the top of their speed. I mean, they are, every second ad I see is Amazon touting that they are starting at 15 and they're going up. I mean, great that you are doing that, but the point here is that many people who should be working are not working, and that is the point that needs to happen, because these people have experience having worked in those jobs. That is something that cannot be replicated like a switch, like the Biden administration thought. I'm sorry, viewers, I'm getting a little exasperated here, because knowingly doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result is the definition of insanity. Sridharji, your thoughts?
I think I would say that this is an internal battle between the progressive caucus versus the moderate Democrats. Moderate Democrats or the traditional Democrats will not engage in such policies, sir. Okay, they have never done that. But the progressive group, the progressive caucus, is what is driving some of this, what you call illogical decisions that is going on within the administration. They seem to be holding the sway. They seem to be holding the power block. It's frightening to assume that if they completely take over the Democratic Party, what is in store for United States? So I won't blame the Democratic Party per se, but I would say point fingers at this progressive group, which has no iota of economics in their mindset or DNA. And unfortunately, they hold the sway and driving some of the things around the Biden policies.
And the Modi government is going to decide on a 21,000 crore Predator drone deal with the United States. This has been in discussions, and at the peak of the Ladakh crisis, 2 drones were leased from the United States. I think this was a time when Mike Pompeo was still the Secretary of State, if I remember correctly. And I think there were some discussions. There was a phone call from Vice President Kamala Harris to the Minister Nitin Gadkari also in connection with this, Sridharji. What's the latest on this?
Well, I think that I don't know all the specific insights that you are alluding to, but I do know that the drones have become a very potent. Mike Pompeo clearly led the effort in making those drones available. And Mike Pompeo even stood in India and made the statement, we know what China is doing in the Ladakh region. If you remember the BEX deal, which is bilateral exchange of communication services deal that was initiated and struck, which is to offer the satellite imagery to Indian armed forces as a mechanism. Now, of course, India has its own satellites which can cover the region under cloud or without cloud cover as to what is happening. And then these drones clearly help in the surveillance. So I think on the back of that, they've recognized with increased buildup and increased infrastructure being developed by China, the drones were an imperative, and it looks like India is going to get it as a continuation. At least between defense to defense between India and the United States, things seems to be moving forward. And of course, the defense lobby is very powerful in the United States. They need the money because to reboot the economic system, and India is a big buyer.
And viewers, there's a bit of more of the perspective of the drone strategy that China and through Pakistan and Turkey is adopting now. And there is about a 7-minute video that I taped yesterday about why India has increased the reach of the border security force from 15 kilometers to 50 kilometers. Do watch that one for getting a little bit more perspective. Drones are going to be the next generation, eyes and ears, as well as your fighting front line of offense, in my opinion. Let's wait and see how this plays out. Russia has already trained Indian specialists to operate the first set of S-400 missiles delivered. Sridharji, I want to set the context here. Some people are dead against India buying S-400. Some others from India have said that the S-400 missiles do not have any software or hardware from China, and that this is a crown jewel of Russia, and that Russia knows that if once it lets China get into its crown jewel, then it is game over, and therefore that S-400 is quite safe. This is just what I have been told. This has been reiterated many times on PGurus, several hangouts. I'm just putting it out there because there's a chance that some congressmen's staff could be watching this program. So understand that there is more layers here than what is being shown. Sridharji, your thoughts?
I think I'll give a little bit of a fun on the software from Russia. Okay, I graduated from IIT Bombay, and there we had Russian computers. I'm talking about going 45 years, called EC-1030 or EC series. We had firstly the software was in Russian. None of us could kind of understand. But India was competent enough, and from compilers to assemblers to the software, India wrote, and they made this bloody EC series computers work, and lots of things have been done. So if S-400 technology is supplied to India, India has enough brain power and mind power in terms of what they can do with it. So software will not be an issue. As far as the Chinese is concerned, in terms of their ability, Chinese they are one of the leading warriors of cyber attacks in the world. They will make Russians look puny within the context of the Russian software. So the story is that those who want to hack can hack. The question is what you can do with it in a combat situation. I think this is where what India is saying is give us the tools that we need. And don't worry about the strategy and execution. We know how to deal with it, be it drones, be it S-400, and so on. So this is not some kind of an armchair strategy discussion, but this is about the armed forces capable of defending itself once the tools are given, and don't deny the tools.
And the Asia Development Bank extends a $61 million loan to improve the infrastructure of Tripura's Agartala. Sridharji, does India need these kind of loans now? Can it not finance it itself?
So I think the basic theory here is that the ADB has a set of developmental programs. This has been agreed to, and India is part of ADB. India is also part of this this infrastructure bank in China. So they contribute capital. When you contribute capital, therefore, you are entitled to receive some benefits. You don't want to be like United States, where you are dumping capital without getting anything. What is in United States getting from IMF, World Bank, United Nations, and a plethora of organizations? Remember, United States reserves is only about $250 billion, and United States is the biggest debtor in the world. So therefore, that India is applying the right model. You are giving the capital, deploy the capital, no problem. Whether it is coming via debt, whether it is coming via foreign direct investment, or whether it is raised domestically, it doesn't matter. So to me, deploy the capital, derive the benefits, and move forward. I think Agartala city, probably ADB identified, they're putting the capital, use it, sir. That's how I look at it.
Very sensible, sir, and thanks for clarifying that. Exports jumped to 43% and imports jumped to 62% in October in signs of India's rebounding economy. Sridharji, the Fitch rating has still maintained a BBB minus with a negative outlook, but the numbers seem to show otherwise. What is the disconnect here, Sridharji?
I think the disconnect is that you have to look at rating agency with some lens of skepticism. They have their own methodologies by which they rate. There's a lot of inconsistent information that is dished out by a number of organizations and agencies, and many of these agencies are littered with staff with some old methodologies in their mindset. As far as the reserves is concerned, India has plenty of reserves. As far as the macro and microeconomics is concerned, it points to a growth trajectory. So what is the concern of the rating agencies? The rating agencies' concerns are whether India will require more fiscal stimulus, whether it is going to borrow more money to induce stimulus into the program in the absence of credit expansion from the banking sector. So if that is the case, does it put risk on the balance sheet of the Indian debt? So this is where this is what they are talking about in terms of rating B versus rating A.
I just wanted to touch upon a news item that somebody had commented that there was an outage yesterday. I believe it was a Google server that got hacked, and many websites that were based on the Google server got affected. I think it is back up now. Indian Central Bank has deep concerns around cryptocurrencies. Sridharji, this is something that I think they need to get educated on. I think they should look at our first episode where we had looked at it in some depth. In fact, I was the one who was asking you all the questions about, I was a doubting Thomas in that particular instance, and you were the one who was giving out the explanation of why cryptocurrencies, especially in a country to country transaction and so on. Sridharji, now, what do you think India needs to do? I mean, you can't just ignore something that's a compelling technology. To me, blockchain is a compelling technology, and there are many uses for it, and that can be put to use. Forget, let's say cryptocurrency is just an application of that blockchain technology. Slight difference. I think people need to understand some of these things before they start saying this is good, this is bad. Don't put a broad brush to tar it with. This is how I look at it. Certainly, you are more familiar with this, sir. Perhaps you can spend a couple of minutes explaining this. We are well into 40 minutes, but I think that's okay. This is important. Today, everybody needs to know the good, the bad, and the ugly aspect of cryptocurrencies.
India's primary worry seems to be stemming from money laundering and the cryptos being used for potential anti-national security type of activities. I think that's where that's one of the primary objections. That's where concerns that is coming from. Second is probably India is a bit late to the game in accepting the cryptos and putting an infrastructure as to what needs to be done. All this could change over a period of time once India begins to understand the infrastructure that it needs to put in place, irrespective of whether it accepts or rejects it. So I think I would suggest that you're going to see a controlled evolution, notwithstanding the fact the initial reaction of we are extremely concerned, extremely concerned, extremely concerned. Remember, the crypto today is not around the world, is not recognized for business transactions. If there are, then there is probably some extent of G2G transactions, but mostly it is around the wallets, around the retail individual consumer with various KYC types of policies. But having said that, it is the internal banking systems are not well organized as yet in many countries. For example, in the United States, they're slowly beginning to embrace and accept where a bank account can be used to fund and a bank account can be used for redemption and depositing the money. Some of the more advanced countries like Korea, Japan, even small Singapore have started to accept around the retail side of the business. So my China is, of course, is quite draconian. It keeps a very close eye on the crypto transactions. So you're going to see India eventually join in some mechanism to accept the crypto ecosystem. And as you rightly pointed out, the underlying technologies such as the encryption, such as the distributed ledger, such as the blockchain, etc., will eventually become part of the mainstream. But the main concern is around the open distribution of crypto as a payment mechanism to individuals and institutions.
Viewers, there is going to be an in-depth discussion between me and Sridharji on cryptocurrencies, where we are going to talk about all these things. For example, he touched upon the two words, distributed ledger technology and blockchain. The way I look at it, and Sridharji can correct me if I'm wrong, and he will do that in that program. Blockchain is a subset of distributed ledger technology. Distributed ledger technology is a more wider concept. But anyway, so the point here is those are excellent foundational platforms for implementing your land reform, land record maintenance, elections, even monitoring currency, not the way that the Indian government is looking at it, but there's a different way to do this thing. I have been at pains to explain this to many banks in India. I did this 2-3 years ago. Somehow I just did not see the traction. Maybe they were not seized of the matter at that point. Perhaps maybe now they are. I am going to be in India. I'm open. If anybody reaches out to me, I'll be happy to come and give them an explanation in a more in-depth manner. What is a blockchain and how it can be harnessed for more efficient banking operations. Sridharji, let's take a look at markets now. Standard & Poor's and Dow climbed to record closes after strong retail data. Home Depot leads the Dow higher. This is, of course, the Dow Jones Industrial. Janet Yellen says inflation will remain at an elevated levels until COVID is controlled. Goes back to what I was saying, that you need to understand where it started, because unless you know where it started, you don't know the starting point, starting variables. Therefore, your vaccine is not going to be that effective. Japan and Thailand GDP is back into contraction mode with COVID cases last quarter. I don't know, sir. This is like a mantra. I'm saying the same thing again and again. Find the source, find the source, find the source.
Well, political ecosystem is different to rational ecosystem. So therefore, political ideologies probably conflict with rational ideologies, which is namely, let's address the issue, let's tackle the disease, let's make the world a better place. But sometimes if you use that as a geopolitical weapon and for you to achieve your specific agenda, then we witness these types of chaos that we are witnessing. At least fortunately, we are able to travel, notwithstanding the fact that you probably have to take 16 different types of vaccines before 16 different types of tests, from antigens to RT-PCRs to PCRs and rapid PCRs before you board the plane, after you land in the plane. We keep your noses and your throat very clean, because those two things will be attacked with instruments so that they can determine whether you are fit enough to travel and fit enough not to infect somebody else.
Absolutely, sir. In one of my samplings, my nose was too dry, and I had to do something to try and make it wet. Oh my God, it's fun. Anyway, the fact that despite all these things, you and I are traveling shows our enthusiasm to interact and meet with people. Today, it's not a fun time to travel, especially long flights, because you have to have your mask on practically throughout, except when you are eating, although that time gives you enough time to spread because the cabin is pressurized. I mean, I'm sometimes bogged, sir. Once you are in with a negative, then why don't you just let people be without masks? Anyway, they have to take their masks off to eat, and the air is getting recirculated anyway. So this is just my two cents. Viewers, we took a little bit longer today, but I think we have covered a rich amount of data. Sridharji, thank you so much. And I apologize for not doing it yesterday. We had some technical difficulties. Also, we have today seen some technical difficulty as far as YouTube is concerned, and we will address that right away. Thank you once again, Sridharji. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, with more DGI. Please do, as soon as the program starts, click on the like button. Please help us achieve our goal. We want to get to a much higher zone in terms of views of DGI. We are diligent with our data. We don't want to take sides in this, and we want to make sure that you, the viewer, gets the truth. Thank you very much, and see you again tomorrow. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar. Have a wonderful day, wonderful evening, and we'll be back tomorrow, to continue with this, wonderful, navigation around the world.